You're listening to the House Guy and Home Girl podcast, a podcast about real estate and real life. As realtors, home builders, and real estate investors, John and Kim keep it real. Former teachers turned real estate professionals, they have a heart for helping others. Join them each week as they discuss all things home. And now, here's your hosts, John and Kim.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, John, the House Guy. Another solo show this week to kind of talk about a few things that we've got going on. We've been working on this house and getting it going. You've heard us talking about getting our blueprint together and getting ready to build and agonizing over design choices and all that. And now we're finally to the point where we have that blueprint finalized. We have our lot. We're ready to move forward. So I thought it'd be a good idea to stop and give you guys kind of a fill-in as far as what we've been doing. We haven't broken ground yet, what it's going to take to get to the point where you're actually ready to start. So I've got some steps here laid out, and I want to give those to you in the order that we've done them this week so you can know, hey, here's what I got to do before I ever break ground on a house. So the first thing you're going to want to do is secure your lot. You got to know where you're going to build and then get your blueprint done. We've already done that, right? We've talked through that process. You want to make sure your blueprint and the house layout that you've chosen fits on the lot like you need it to. And then you put those two things together. You got the lot, you got the blueprint. Now we're ready to go start building. So before we ever break ground, the next step is going to be to get a survey done if you didn't have a survey done when you bought the lot. So the survey is going to include what they call a plot plan. And what that plot plan is going to do, it's going to show all of the easements and setbacks that are going to be part of that lot. So on the lot that we're dealing with right now, we have an easement from the city for a drainage gutter, right? So there is on the very edge of our property that we're building on, there's a drainage gutter that is about, I think it's about a 10 or 15 foot easement. So we can't dig any footers or do anything over the top of that easement. So that kind of made our house have to shift over a little bit, right? Our plot plan is also going to show our setbacks. So especially in a subdivision, now you're not going to have these setbacks if you're building out in the country somewhere, but in a subdivision, you're going to have setbacks, which means the city has determined how far back off the road the house needs to sit so that they have an easement in the front for their utilities. The subdivision will have covenants in place that tell you how far off of your neighbor's property you can build a structure. So, for instance, in our neighborhood back here, it's 15 feet from the side of the property. We can start our structure. So 15 feet from either side. And then off the back, we have a setback of 35 feet. So you have this larger lot that you purchased, but the actual usable space of that lot has shrunk down now because of the easements, setbacks, utilities, all of the things that this plot plan is going to show you where your house needs to go. So you get that done. That's the first step. Now, if you're in the county, if you're even like this lot that we're building on is in the city, but it has it doesn't have city sewer access. So it is going to require a septic tank, an on-site sewage system. And so the next step is to complete a septic tank application, right? And that's going to take this one I did took about 2 weeks. It may take longer if there's a longer line in front of you or the weather doesn't cooperate. So the first part of that is going to be if your lot did not have what they call a perk test done, a percolation test, which basically they come out, they dig some holes to see how the water is going to drain in that soil, in that grade, and then they tell you, okay, here's where your perk is, here's how much water flows through that soil, and that's going to be required. You're going to have that perk test information when you fill out your septic tank application, unless your lot already has sewer access and then you're connected to city sewer, and this step doesn't apply. But for us, we're on a septic tank back there, and so we're going to complete our septic tank application. Part of that application is going to be our plot plan. On our plot plan, it's going to show what they call the EDF field, which is your drainage field, and your reserve EDF field. So septic systems, they say, will fail regardless over a 50-year period. So you have to have a secondary, that's here in our county, in Colbert County in Alabama. It may be different depending on where you're at, but you're going to have a secondary area where that septic tank can be relocated to in the event of failure of the primary location. So you have a set field of field lines, and then you have a secondary place. So between all of that, there really winds up being, a specific place where your house has to go. So you're gonna get your septic tank application. You're gonna have your plot plan included, and then you're gonna have to go out on your lot and mark off the location of where the plot plan shows the tank will be, where your field lines are going to go, and your reserve area for your field lines. You're going to have to flag that off with marking flags so that the health inspector, when he comes out, he can see very clearly where those areas are and where your house is going to sit, so that all lays out like it's supposed to with the grade of the ground. And at that point, and the amount of field lines that you have to have is also based on your blueprint. So if you have more bedrooms, more bathrooms, you have to have more length in your field lines. So that's all part of your septic tank application. The plot plan is required for your septic tank application. That takes a couple weeks. Once you've got that, you've got your plot plan, your septic tank application done, you'll be in on, they'll approve you. If everything goes right, they'll approve you. You'll get your septic tank permit. Now, the next step is going to be, if you're in city limits, you're going to have to apply for a building permit. So these things step on top of each other, right? So the first step, you got to have the blueprint so that you can get the plot plan done. You got to have the plot plan so you can do the septic tank application. The septic tank application is required and permit required so you can go and apply for your building permit from the city wherever you're building, right? So you take your plot plan, your blueprint, and your approved septic tank permit to the city building department. You fill out an application there based on the square footage and the plot plan and everything. They check all your setbacks, they check all your utility access, they check everything for you. Then they are going to issue you a building permit, right? They're going to check basically everything that you've already been through. They're going to check that against the city easements and all the things, make sure the plot plan is correct, and then they're going to issue you a building permit. And that's going to give you permission to go ahead and break ground. When you have that building permit, they're going to look at the total square footage, and they're going to charge you based on that total square footage. In most instances, they're going to look at everything that you're planning on doing and then say, okay, a house that size, we get, plug that in our computer, and then we get X number of dollars. That's what you owe for your building permit. So once you have your building permit, now you're set, you're ready to break ground. But before you do that, you need to go with all this information and go to the city utility department or the county or wherever it is you've got to get utilities, because you're going to need water and electricity to get started. So the city is going to require you to have your building permit in place. And once you have your building permit in place, you take that to them, you apply for utilities. They're going to ask you some questions like, what size water line would you like to have? If there's not already a water meter in place, you're going to have your water meter set. They're going to ask you how much service you need. 200 amp is pretty standard here. Those questions that they have are going to be pretty easy to answer, but you'll need to be prepared to answer those and know. Do you want a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch water line? Do you already have these located to where you want them to be? Then you're going to have your electrician that's going to do your wiring for your house set a temporary pole, right? Because you have to have a meter for them to connect to for your electricity. So your electrician will set your temporary pole in place. The city will come out, inspect that pole, and make sure that it meets all the safety requirements and everything that it needs to. They'll connect that electrical wire from that pole to the electrical that comes out of the ground or overhead. They'll connect all that for you, and they'll put you a meter in place so you can start having electricity on site, so you can run power saws and charge batteries and have electricity on site, because that's the only way you're going to have electricity on an empty lot. Also, they'll come out, and if you don't already have one, they'll set your water meter in place, and you'll want your plumber to come and give you a temporary water access. So what he'll do is come to your meter and basically stick a pipe up out of the ground that has a hose bib on it, because you're going to need water for, your concrete, for cleaning up things, for, various things. You're going to need, obviously, you're going to need water, temporary water. So once you have temporary water, temporary power, the next thing you're going to want to do before you start breaking ground is you're going to want to call before you dig, right? You hear the commercials on the radio and on TV, call before you dig. That's your line location. So you want to make sure, now the city will do their own line location, at least they do here. You may need to do that just to be sure, but you want to have a line location. And what that does is before you dig, first of all, it's a law that you make sure that you call in, because you want to make sure that all electrical, gas, water, internet, phone, any kind of cable that's buried underground has been identified and marked, so you know where it's safe to dig, right? Gas, especially, any kind of stuff like that. So the different utilities, I think it's, if you call 811 here in the state of Alabama, I think it's like maybe a 48-hour period that they have to identify, maybe 72, I can't remember. But then you have a good working window with that line location for a couple weeks. I believe it's 14 days. It may be 30. I can't remember exactly. But regardless, you want to just call before you dig. The utility companies will come out. They'll flag their utilities. They'll say, here's where our electrical lines are. Here's where the gas lines are. They'll paint on the ground with different colors, like blue for water, orange for phone line, yellow for gas, red for electricity. And so if you see those markings maybe in your neighborhood or on a lot somewhere with red paint, orange paint, that's what that is. It's a line location. If you're building a fence, you need to do the same thing. If you're doing stuff at your house, you always want to call before you dig, because that takes kind of the liability off of you or your contractor, as the utilities have marked it, and that makes it safe. If you just go out there and start digging and hit a gas line and it costs $20,000 to repair it, and you didn't call before you dug and have them come out and identify that, then that's on you. That liability rests on you. So always call before you dig. We do that before we break ground. Now the last thing you want to do before you break ground, you want to get your permits, your utilities in place. You want to get your permits and your plot plan, and go over with your foundation contractor all of the details. You want to walk that lot with them and say, here's where we want the house to lay out. Here's how far off this line we're going to put this wall. Here's where this has got to be because of the setbacks. Here's where the septic tank is going to be. Here's where the utilities are going to come in. Here's where we think the driveway will be. And make sure that house 100% lays out where it needs to. My concrete guy, my foundation guy, and myself, we'll walk that lot, and we'll take some paint, and we'll paint our outline down for the footers, and then we'll be ready to go. We'll make sure it lays out like it's supposed to, exactly in those lines, and then you're ready to dig. Now, you give your contractor the blueprint, you give him the plot plan, you go over it with him, and then you're waiting on the weather to cooperate most of the time, right? So once the weather gets good, you're ready to dig your footers, get your foundation in place. As an aside, from that time, you're also going to want to be thinking about a couple of things to get your house on to the next step. And that's going to be the next step for us. So we'll keep you kind of updated as we go forward in the show in the weeks ahead. But you're going to want to, what we're in the process of doing this right now, you're going to want to order your windows, your doors, your garage doors, anything that's going to have a lead time. So if you go to your supply house or talk to your builder about the fixtures that you want to use in your house, like light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, tubs, showers, any of that stuff, then you need to talk to the suppliers about how much lead time that requires, right? If you're ordering something, if you're ordering a tub and it takes 4 months to get it in, then you should have already had that order, but you need to order it ASAP. If you're ordering garage doors, like we dealt with this, especially last year, like as things were kind of getting back on track after the pandemic, windows were taking like 4 months to get them in. And then if something got messed up on your window, it took 2 more months. So we had a particular instance on this last house we did where we were 6 months into the process, still waiting on 2 windows. So you want to make sure you have a discussion with your builder about lead times for certain things, and then get those ordered before you break ground. That way you're not waiting around on those things after you've broken ground. Because you can get in a situation where you break ground, you pour your concrete, you have all that stuff, you're ready to go, and then you're framed up and you're sitting there just waiting, right? You're just waiting on the next thing to come in and nothing is happening. And it's very frustrating, especially if you're paying interest on a construction loan, to see 3-4 weeks go by and nothing at all happen on your build site. So that's our first step that we take before we break ground. It's going to be very similar for you. I hope this information is helpful to you. If so, give us a like and a subscribe below. Make sure you subscribe to the show. We'll be kind of keeping you updated as we go through the process of this house. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Drop them in a comment below or send me a text or email. I'll be glad to help you any way I can to get you through this process and help you with your home building. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Thanks for listening to the House Guy and Home Girl podcast, your #1 source for all things home. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out our YouTube page for video content from the show.